Surprise! Your rent went up again.
These firms are making such extravagant profits, the idea that they need to raise rents.
And the two buildings across the street? Same jump. You called that a coincidence. Just the market. Inflation.
We're going to see more and more Canadians priced out of living in their communities. I worry.
But state prosecutors across the country call it a cartel. And the software they say ran it is still legal in almost every state. For years, some of the biggest landlords in America stopped competing on price. Instead, they fed your rent data into one piece of software. And so did every competitor down the street. That software told all of them what to charge. You'll see how it worked, how they trained people to hide it from you, and why you might be owed a settlement check you've never heard about. Landlords always had the upper hand, but at least they were competing for you. A company called RealPage sold landlords a different idea. Stop guessing. Start sharing. Almost nobody caught this in real time. It started with reporters at ProPublica, pulling public rent listings and comparing them building by building, noticing that buildings that should have been competing with each other were actually moving in the exact same direction, at the exact same time. They published what they found, and state investigators started pulling at the same threads. RealPage isn't a household name, and that's by design, but it may have decided what your monthly rent was for your last 3 apartments. There was no single moment where this became a scandal everyone was talking about. Just reporters and investigators cross-referencing rent data across different cities for years. So most of us never heard about it. We all just accepted the rent increases year after year, chalking it up to inflation or poor timing on the move. In 2022, ProPublica examined one zip code just north of downtown Seattle. 10 property managers controlled about 70% of the roughly 9,000 apartments there. All 10 used RealPage's software. That's not 10 landlords competing. That's 10 landlords working together to keep rents across that neighborhood artificially high. It reached far past Seattle. The Attorneys General of Arizona and Washington, D.C. sued RealPage and a group of large landlords, alleging a housing cartel dressed up as technology. In parts of D.C., prosecutors alleged the software priced the overwhelming majority of big apartment units. The Arizona Attorney General didn't call it software. She called it collusion. Landlords feed RealPage the numbers they'd normally guard, what they charge, when leases expire, what discounts they offer to fill a slow unit, the exact information a competitor would never hand over in a fair fight. RealPage takes these numbers and doesn't just look at other units in your building. It looks at every similar unit across your whole area, apartments at buildings that were supposed to be your landlord's competition, and returns a recommended rent for each unit. But landlords couldn't just quietly undercut that number. Accepting was easy. A manager could approve every price in the building at once, in a single click. Overriding, however, was not. Rejections had to be done, one at a time, and each one required written business justification. Not a preference for a lower price, a reason. RealPage assigned each landlord a pricing advisor whose job was reviewing those rejections. Disagreements got escalated to the manager's boss. Training materials told clients to have the discipline to follow the software's prices at least 90% of the time, and warned regional managers to watch for rogue leasing agents who overrode recommendations too often. It worked. Prosecutors say more than 85% of final prices landed within 5% of what RealPage recommended. The pitch to landlords wasn't hidden in fine print either. Prosecutors say RealPage put it in writing, in materials for prospective landlord clients. Sign up and expect a 2 to 7% lift in revenue. Not from renting more units, not from better service, but simply from price. In Phoenix, prosecutors allege rents rose 76% since 2016. And at least 30% of that came in just the 2 years before the lawsuit. Income in the same area rose about 55% over that same stretch. Rent didn't just outpace paychecks, it ran right past them. This wasn't unique to Phoenix either. The White House's own economic advisors found that renters in the Dallas area paid an extra $132 a month in 2023 if their landlord used this software. One detail shows they knew exactly how this looked. Landlords were coached on what to tell tenants when they were asked why the rent was so high, or why it jumped so much in a year. They were told not to bring up RealPage, and not to say the word algorithm. This is part of why you've probably never heard the name RealPage before today. It's not a household brand. It was never supposed to be. It works behind the leasing office, not in front of it, and the people in front of it were told to keep it that way. They were told to say the units were priced individually. That sounds like an answer, but it isn't. It's not going to tell you which factors changed or why your unit went up more than your neighbor's. It's a phrase built to end the conversation, not start one. Sharing data isn't a crime, you might think. It's a suggestion. The landlord still clicks accept. That's the defense. It's also what regulators say collapses under the facts. Normally, this kind of price fixing needs coordination. A phone call or a meeting, some sort of agreement. That's what makes it provable and illegal. RealPage's defense is that none of that happened. Landlords independently chose to use it. But regulators point out that antitrust law has never required an actual handshake. It requires a shared outcome from shared information. If competitors are feeding private data into one pipeline, and that pipeline decides the price for all of them, it doesn't matter that a machine did the coordinating instead of a person. Your rent still wasn't set by competition, and it wasn't really a suggestion in the end. RealPage trained its advisors to have an accountability conversation with clients who pushed back too much. RealPage denies all of it. The company says it never violated antitrust law. It says the software uses aggregated market data legally, leans on each building's own supply and demand, and reduces the risk of collusion compared with landlords phoning rivals for quotes. Every settlement ahead was signed with no admission of wrongdoing. The government caught up with RealPage. In November 2025, the Department of Justice agreed to settle. RealPage paid no fine or damages to renters and got away with no admission of guilt. The one agency with the power to punish them let RealPage walk away with a promise to behave. Compare that to what regulators originally accused them of: a cartel, illegal coordination across an entire industry, hurting millions of renters. And the resolution was 3 years of monitoring and a change to how the software collects data going forward. Not a fine sized to match the harm, just a promise to run it a little differently from here on out. But renters are still getting money back, just not from the government. One group of landlords settled for $141 million. Then, a broader wave brought that past $350 million. Equity Residential alone, one of the biggest landlords in the country, agreed to pay $56 million just to make the case go away. None of them admitted wrongdoing either. They're paying because settling was cheaper than a trial. That's just the cost of doing business. If you rented at a building running this software between late 2018 and late 2025, you may sit inside that settlement class. Being in the class doesn't mean you sue anyone. It doesn't mean a lawyer is going to call you. It means you paid rent somewhere this software touched, and the settlement already assumes people like you exist. It's just waiting for you to raise your hand. The official settlement website has a searchable property list. Type in the address, and it tells you whether your building shows up. Being on that list doesn't automatically make you eligible, but not being on it also doesn't automatically rule you out. Either way, you can file and let them sort it out. But the deadline to file is January 29th, 2027. Most people owed money will never file because they never even knew this was happening. There's no letter showing up to tell you you're owed money. You have to go looking for it. The software was never banned. The DOJ deal targeted the data sharing, not algorithmic pricing itself. But a few states decided that wasn't enough. New York didn't wait for a settlement to bring the price back down. In October 2025, it became the first state to make this practice illegal. Landlords can no longer use software that pools rent and occupancy data from competing buildings to set prices. California followed, then Connecticut, and most recently, New Jersey. Though that one won't actually take effect until the summer of 2027. As of early fall 2026, only 4 states have banned it. Washington came close. The state's attorney general sued RealPage directly. Seattle banned the software inside city limits. A statewide ban passed the state Senate 29-19 and cleared its first committee in the House in March of 2026. Then the session ended before the House ever voted on it. It's been sitting in a holding file ever since. Nobody killed it. It just ran out of time. And Washington isn't the exception. For the rest of the country, algorithmic rent pricing is still perfectly legal today. Rent increases that never made sense weren't in your head. They were engineered by software. What's the craziest rent hike you've ever gotten? And was there any way to negotiate with your landlord? I'm curious to hear your stories. I put the claims link below in the description. Check it out if you think your rent got caught up in one of these schemes.